Hey, good morning, and thank you very much for watching The Echoing Voice. And today is Tuesday, March the 12th, 2024, and the time now is 11:58 a.m. That means we are about 2 minutes to noon time officially. So, in terms of international relations and also in terms of the situation in various countries, when people discussing the reality and the various scenarios or situations in terms of international relations and within the various countries. You will hear words such as freedom, justice, equity, and so on and so on. Today, I'm going to talk about the term, the concept of justice, what I think it means, and how it applies to the situation in my country, Liberia. So, justice, Justice. What is justice and how does it apply to the current situation in Liberia? So, justice is defined as the maintenance or administration of what is just, especially by impartial adjustment of conflicting claims or the assignment of merited rewards or punishment. Once again, justice, according to Webster's dictionary, is defined as the maintenance or administration of what is just, especially by the impartial adjustment of conflicting claims or the assignment of merited rewards or punishment. How does that apply to the current situation in Liberia? Now, Liberia, we are a country founded in the 1820s. Okay, in 1847, Liberia became independent, and the founding of Liberia, we are told that Liberia was founded to send free slaves back to Africa and to settle in Africa. But there are lots of things that correspond to the creation of Liberia. One having to deal with the racism that was happening in the United States, because for many whites in the United States, they did not want black people around. There are those who foresaw the uh, the end of slavery, and there are those who thought blacks were dangerous. There are those who were just flat out racist, who did not want blacks in the United States. So you have the whole idea to resettle blacks in the United States, resettle them in Africa. That was also even talk to resettle them somewhere in the Midwest. So Liberia, we had an election recently, and we currently have a new president, Joseph Boakai, who has been in power for less than a month. So during his inaugural address, he did stress the idea of bringing justice to those, quote unquote, who committed atrocities during the Liberian Civil War. Now, Liberia, we are a country that is known for one of the world, or if not Africa's most dangerous and most painful civil conflict. Okay? Today, many people may know about Sierra Leone because Sierra Leone is probably much recent, but like, and also Sierra Leone is known for the Blood Diamond. Okay, the Blood Diamond movie that basically put Sierra Leone in crisis out there. But the Liberian Civil War was a war of atrocity, pain, and suffering to our people. So now, for the past 24 hours, I have been looking through the net, examining newspaper articles, from Reuters newspaper article to Al Jazeera and so on, to Front Page Africa. So I have been looking at two newspaper articles from Front Page Africa. The first one is basically entitled War Crimes Court for Liberia to be established on Liberian soil. Speaker discloses as U.S. Ambassador at large for global criminal justice pays visit. And the second article, once again from Front Page Africa, reads Liberia. Senator Prince Johnson reportedly uneasy after Bwakai call for establishment of war and economic crimes court. Now, the first article is what I'm going to base my talk today on, which once again, the title of the first article is War Crimes Court for Liberia to be established on Liberian soil. Speaker discloses as U.S. Ambassador at large for global criminal justice pays visit. And I'm going to read a couple of things that I got off of this article. So I'm going to read parts of the article, which I basically copied, and then I will talk about those parts of the article, and I will provide a general opinion on this. So it reads, on Monday, Dr. Beth Van Schaik, the United States Ambassador at large for global criminal justice, who arrived in Liberia on Sunday evening, met with the Speaker of the House of Representatives and sponsor of the war crimes bill to receive updates on the bill status. She is also scheduled to meet with the Liberian Senate later this week. Ambassador Schaik advises the Secretary of State and other department leadership on issues related to the prevention of and response to atrocity crimes, including war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. Continue. The Liberian Civil War stands as one of Africa's most devastating conflicts. Spanning from 1989 to 1996, it resulted in the tragic loss of over 200,000 Liberian lives and forced a staggering 1 million individuals into refugee camps in neighboring nations. Tragically, the conflict also saw the exploitation of child soldiers, further compounding its human toll. But there has been justice for the victims of the war on Liberian soil, while some perpetrator of the atrocity committed during the war holds prominent position in government. Now, in Liberia, and many Liberians and people who've been following the Liberian situation, they know specifically that this part of the article is referring to the Senator Prince Johnson, who is accused of many crimes in Liberia during the Liberian Civil War era. So it's very interesting that when I read both articles on Front Page Africa, the articles are very much vague. Okay? They are saying things like they are not saying it. Now, I'm going to continue. The establishment of the War and Economic Crimes Court for Liberia gained traction when Joseph Boakai, in his inaugural address, pledged to establish an office dedicated to the court. President Boakai emphasized the importance of holding accountable those responsible for war crimes and crimes against humanity by providing them an opportunity to face justice. President Boakai highlighted corruption as a significant obstacle to progress, stressing the necessity of upholding the rule of law to combat it effectively. He declared that combating public corruption is integral to Liberia's development agenda, stating, "We must accordingly reset the fight against corruption and impunity to demonstrate firmness and resolve. Boakai underscored the profound impact of war on Liberia, emphasizing the importance of closure for the nation's healing process. I'm going to continue. In seeking to establish the court, President Boakai expressed his intention to seek guidance and support from the Office of the United Nations Secretary General to ensure that the court, if feasible, adheres to the highest international standard. Additionally, he assured that the legislature would be appropriately involved in the process to avoid any perception of bias or witch hunt. In 2022, Ambassador Schack expressed the United States government's willingness to provide Liberia with all the needed support when she said, "The Liberian government has to be accountable to its people. The U.S. government is willing to support through technical and financial means to establish a tribunal." She made the statement while visiting Liberia in October that year. So that is the first article. Now, the second article reads, and again, I am basically reading right now a couple of parts that I took from the article. So, two paragraphs that I took from the second article. The first paragraph of the second article reads, "The call for the establishment of War and Economic Crimes Court has been lingering the corridors of the Executive Mansion and the National Legislature, almost unattended to, and Senator Johnson, who is well documented for several executions, massacres, rape, and other heinous crimes during the Civil War, has often enjoyed some sorts of protection from previous regimes." They are talking in this case, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and George Weah. The second paragraph reads, "Like him or not, Senator Johnson is a powerful political figure in Liberian politics. Hailing from the indigenous vote-rich Nimba County, Senator Johnson was instrumental in aiding Madam Sirleaf's victory in 2005 and 2011. His support to George Weah lended him the presidency over Joseph Boakai in 2017, and his support for Boakai lended Boakai the presidency in the November run of election last year." So, the second paragraph of the second article, and it doesn't necessarily mean the second paragraph, but from what I pieced together, basically is saying that this man, Prince Johnson, is a powerful figure in Liberia. Him supporting Ellen Johnson Sirleaf in both 2005 and 2011 was a boost to her winning the election. Supporting George Weah in 2017 had George Weah winning the election, and support of Joseph Boakai last year had him winning the election. So this guy is a powerful figure. Beyond just the support, in Liberia, there is this thing where he is known, whether he said it himself or people just attribute it to him. He is known to be, quote unquote, the godfather of Nimba County. Nimba County is a populated county in Liberia. When you look at the Liberian map, the Montserrado County, Monrovia region, having about 1 million, 2 million people. And then the Nimba County is the next most populated place. So Liberia now, I think we have about 5.2 or 5.3 million people. Now, let me go back to the definition of justice. Justice in this case is defined as the maintenance or administration of what is just, especially by the impartial adjustment of conflicting claims or the assignment of merited rewards or punishment. Is it necessary to destroy the lives of people only to administer justice. Does justice itself, by this definition or in this situation, means that we should disturb the current situation in Liberia? Because honestly, I do believe the most injustice to Liberia in this case, or the injustice in any case to the Liberian people pertaining to the current situation in the country, is the return of Liberia as a country, as a nation, and as a people to the 36 years of turbulence, of which 14 years were years of all out war. So, honestly, I do believe this so called war crimes court could potentially lead to another crisis in Liberia that could lead to another civil war, or if not another civil war, to a very terrible situation for the country. But let me start by bringing the United States in this. I think the United States runs a risk of being seen as an agitator of crisis, or an agitator of the situation, or a situation that could become very dangerous for Liberia. And given what is being accused, for example, in current or recent times, Victoria Newland, quote unquote, resigned from her position, but it is being said that she was actually forced out. And Victoria Newland is being attributed to be the person who initiated the situation in Ukraine, which eventually led to what is happening in Ukraine. There is an accusation of her showing up in Ukraine in 2014, and you have the Maidan Revolution and a whole lot of stuff. In this case, you have an American ambassador at large showing up in Liberia. And the statement that is being made, whether she's making it or Liberian official are making, it's basically not going well with a lot of Liberians, and it could lead to many Liberians start looking at the United States in a negative light. And the way it appears to be, it is not about justice. It appears as if it is a witch hunt. It's very interesting. Part of the first article mentioned witch hunt, which reads, additionally, he assured that the legislature would be appropriately involved in the process to avoid any perception of bias or witch hunt. That's President Baraka speaking. But American ambassador and the United States overzealousness in this could lead to the United States being painted as the agitator or as the troublemaker in Liberia. Because honestly, the situation in Liberia, we do not need a crimes court as of now. We do not need a crimes court. Justice is the maintenance or administration of what is just, especially by the impartial adjustment of conflicting claims or the assignment of merited rewards or punishment. Liberia does not need a crimes court. This is the reason why. One is that if there should have been a crimes court, if people like Prince Johnson was supposed to be brought to justice, it should have happened during the presidency of Ellen Johnson. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was in a better position, given that Liberia was just coming out of the Civil War. She was the first elected woman president on the African continent. And the international community, and when I mean the international community, I mean not just rich and powerful country. Because in international relations, when you hear the phrase international community being used, it's often in reference to the rich and powerful white countries, the Western world. but I mean the entire international community, from Africa to the Middle East to Asia to Latin America to the conceptual West. Everybody was very much accommodating of Ellen Johnson. So had Ellen Johnson initiated the activities to go after Prince Johnson and others, she would have been a lot more successful in doing that. She had the strongest backing behind her and the strongest possibility in being successful. Now, looking at the situation in Liberia, I was able to reflect in the past. One of the reasons why people directed strong hate against or towards the previous president, George Weah, was based on the fact that he was not trying to go after Prince Johnson and others. And honestly, I think that was a smart move. I think part of this, one, as Judge Weah himself did stated, he did not want to push the country into crisis. Secondly, I do believe he recognized the power of Prince Johnson. He is known in Liberia, whether he said it himself or not. He is known to be quote unquote the godfather of Nimba County. So people like him and respect him. I remember talking to one Liberian fellow citizen. He did state it to me that a lot of people adored Prince Johnson. A lot of people love him because, according to him, during the Civil War, he did protected Nimba County against whatever group, rebel group. He is considered to be the savior of Nimba County. And I do assume that because of that, he is respected by the people in the county and throughout, many people throughout Liberia. So a person like that going after them could lead the country, Liberia, into a very dangerous situation. Whether the crimes court is established in Liberia or in Ghana, I know in the first article it did stress that the United States ambassador at large, that's Dr. Beth Van Schack, basically stressed that the crimes court should be in Liberia. Whether in Liberia or not, Liberia does not need a crimes court. No. Now, in the same article, both articles, it is stressed that Joseph Boakai and currently in the Liberian Senate, they are stressing the idea of both a crimes court and economic crimes court. That's nonsense. Economic crimes court sounds good. If you are a Liberian or just some guy on the street, especially some guy who's been suffering on the streets in a country whose government is made is occupied by people who many may consider corrupt or whatsoever. The whole idea of an economic crimes court sounds good. However, if you are stressing economic crimes court, who the heck are the criminals and what are the crimes? So when I read the articles, that's what I asked myself. Yes, Joseph Boakai is talking about economic crimes court. So then who are the criminals? And what are the crimes? Are the crimes corruption? Are the crimes embezzlement of the nation's funds? Or whatsoever? But what is so interesting is that in Liberia, many of us Liberians, now let me say global Liberians, this basically includes Liberians at home in Liberia and Liberians in the diaspora abroad. Many will stress the idea that the government is corrupt, it's made of people who are just quote unquote eating the country's money. There are cases of or idea that Liberian politicians are highly paid. Liberian politicians are among the highest paying politicians in the world, period. So there are those who will consider their salary as a form of corruption. You are making many, many times what the average Liberian should be making for a country this poor. Is that a corruption? Is that part of the economic crimes that Joseph Boakai and others are talking about? Which, if that's the case, then the entire Liberian government, the senators, the representatives, and even Joseph Boakai himself will be implicated in this as a criminal. And I'm saying this given that he did serve, I think, 12 years. Yes, 6 and 6. 12 years under Ellen Johnson as the vice president. The salary that all these guys have been making since the end of the Civil War and the beginning of Ellen Johnson's government, that salary is too much. Many Liberians will say that. So the whole idea of calling what's happening in Liberia as an economic crime will be problematic. So one more thing I want to add here is that, for example, Joseph Boakai, I do believe he made a terrible mistake. First of all, the fact that he mentioned the whole idea of going after Prince Johnson, let's be honest. This is about going after Prince Johnson. And whether there are others in the Liberian government or anywhere in Liberia, there are those who are also saying that people such as General Butt-Naked, the guy who during the Liberian Civil War was known to strip himself butt naked. He had a pistol and going around and doing his thing. There are those who are talking about bringing him on trial for crimes. And now this guy has turned to God. He is now a preacher. But if this is not about Prince Johnson, which I do believe it is, then where are we trying to go with this? Where is Joseph Boakai going with this? I think it was a terrible decision. First of all, you have a man who came to power, 79-year-old, about 4 or 5 days before he became 80. He became president. This was a terrible decision. Because a person who might not be around longer is initiating an activity that could plunge the country into chaos. Another part of this is that Joseph Boakai came into power, and the first thing he did is trying to go after Prince Johnson, or trying to go after, quote unquote, economic and criminals, war criminals in Liberia. The economy is right now terrible. I think the economy is number one. The economy should be given prominence in all things. Joseph Boakai going after Prince Johnson and others for war crime could lead to disaster for Joseph Boakai, could basically lead to failure in his government, in his presidency, because the possibility that he is not going to be successful, the possibility that this could lead to unrest in places like Nimba County. We need to take this as Liberians into consideration. What Joseph Boakai should do is focus on fixing the Liberian economy. And fixing the Liberian economy, yes, you can say going after corruption. But what is the type or the kinds of corruption that you're going after? What is considered corruption varies. However, there are things, activities that politicians could engage in that many could call corruption. But for the sake of pushing a bill, for the sake of bygone being bygone, those activities are parts of what make a government what it is and how the government is run. It doesn't necessarily make it right or wrong. So I think what many in Liberia and around the world, Liberians around the world, are demonstrating is our tendency to act on impulse rather than being analytical and strategic. Going after Prince Johnson and going after other Liberians in the manner this economic crimes code and this war crimes code could be bringing about, could be chaotic for Liberians. Okay, so I actually honestly hope that Joseph Boakai's government think about what is it is about to embark on thoroughly, be strategic, get all the advices that they can get to move forward. But I think what Liberia need is not a war crimes court, not also the economic crimes court in the manner as is being propagated. What Liberia need is truth and reconciliation two. In this case, or three or four. In this case, all of Liberians need to hold hands together and pray. Pray for the healing of our country. Pray that the situation that we found ourselves in the past how many years, especially during the course of our Civil War years, should not should not be repeated. Those guys who quote unquote committed the crime, they should be forgiven. They should come out once again and disclose their crimes and ask for forgiveness. The country must be willing to forgive them, hold hands with them, and pray with them. I think it is silly that you let people like Prince Johnson to live after the Liberian Civil War, to serve in the government, went about building college in Nimba or whatever, insert itself in the consciousness, in the heart of the people of Nimba, become senators, reinsert himself in the consciousness of Liberia. Then you say you're gonna put him on trial for war crime. That is the stupidest thing ever. These guys are acting on impulse. They're acting on the say-so of an outside country rather than thinking of the betterment and the peaceful resolution of the situation in their country. Look, the ambassador of the United States can go to Liberia and say all this thing about freedom, justice, and war crime, all that nonsense. Let's assume they create the war crimes court and they go after Prince Johnson. They bring Prince Johnson to trial. And you start having unrest in Nimba. Ambassador Shah, she's going to come back to America and she's going to relax. The ambassador's children will be peaceful. Her family will live peacefully and attend good school. Liberian children will be dying like dogs. Liberian people will be displaced. Liberia will be once again added to its current reality of instability. Liberia will be once again unstable. Now let's create the economic crimes court. If you create the economic crimes court, what are you going after? Who are you going after? How? And also, is Joseph Boakai himself ready to scrutinize himself and to be scrutinized when this economic crimes court become inclusive and impartial? Is he ready to be scrutinized? So these are things that I am not sure if Liberian politicians and the regular Liberian people are taking into consideration. Secondly, also, I am very worried that with this economic crimes court and war crimes court, that Liberia could put itself in a situation where it could become a pawn in the current reality in geopolitics. We see what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in Palestine, what could be happening in Asia. Okay, and I'm referring to the situation between Taiwan and China. Liberia does not want to be in those situations. Okay, our priority should be absolute peace, unification, and prosperity of our people in Liberia. And honestly, I do believe that injustice in Liberia in this case, in reference to the current situation and the move to establish an economic and a war crimes court in Liberia, injustice in this case would be pushing Liberia to return to the years prior to and during the Liberian Civil War, the 30 years of the Liberian Civil War years. And this would be the most outrageous example of injustice. Liberia, I believe, do not need a war crimes court or an economic crimes court. Liberia need another truth and reconciliation. Liberia need to forgive itself and its children. Chasila is in prison. The situation, the country did not ignite into another civil war. Let's leave everybody the way it is. Let's try to build from what we are. Okay? And not add to the situation that we are already in. We are talking about in Liberia going after war criminals and going after economic criminals. What the hell are we doing to rehabilitate the youth? Are we working on the economic situation for the country at large? Are we making education free for the youth or cheap, affordable for the youth and for family? Are we working to create jobs in Liberia? These are things that we should be talking about. These are things that we should be talking about and not try to plunge the country into another wave of civil war. What is justice? Justice is defined as the maintenance or administration of what is just, especially by the impartial adjustment of conflicting claims or the assignment of merited rewards or punishment. How does it apply to the current situation in Liberia? The hottest topic in Liberia right now pertains to the drive to establish a war crimes court and an economic crimes court. I stated many times that Liberia does not need a war crimes court. Liberia does not need an economic crimes court, especially in the manner in which it is being propagated. What Liberia need is one, standardizing our languages, our indigenous Liberian languages. Two, rehabilitating the youth. Okay? Rehabilitating the public, the citizens. Create a situation in which every Liberian youth and citizens and politician to begin to see themselves as Liberia to the highest level, not to become excessive or intensive or extreme in their Liberianness, but to take pride in themselves and in their countries. To create a pan-African or pan-Liberianism, to prep young people to take over politics, take over the government, in that they see themselves as career politicians, where it does not matter which government they serve. Liberia first. Every 4 years in the United States, we are accustomed to seeing mass rally politicians giving beautiful speeches and trying to get people to vote for them. And when they come to power, it is often the same thing as the previous president or the previous government. That is the situation in America. Basically, we are told stories about freedom and justice in the American context. We are bombarded with images, symbolism of the American democracy. However, my conclusion is that American democracy, as is propagated or celebrated in the media, is nothing but pageantry. We see the pageantry of beautiful speeches. We see the pageantry of banner, okay, representing the various political sections of the country of society, and we see the symbolism of people going out to vote. But when politicians come to power in America, it is often the same thing. There are many who will say the American political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, are two sides of the same coins, and they are, especially in reference to American foreign policy. What is the American foreign policy? The simplest way I would define the American foreign policy is the American foreign policy means American exceptionalism, American dominance. No person will ever become president of the United States who does not believe, who does not emphasize the concept, the idea, or the reality of American exceptionalism. The only difference is that the Democrats and the Republicans might do it differently. Republicans just want to go and bomb, 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 bomb everything. Democrats may call for programs to help to assist the poor. Republicans may talk about financial and economic conservatism. Meanwhile, they are spending massive amounts on America's war machine. Republicans might talk about uh, people's rights and freedom of speech, freedom of guns, Second Amendment rights. And Democrats may talk about minority rights. That's the difference. But it doesn't matter who comes to power. Victoria Newland, who she had served several presidents, about three presidents, okay? The previous Judge Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden, four presidents. I will guarantee that Victoria Newland is actually a Republican. She is a neoconservative. She is a conservative. But she had served Democrats and Republicans. What is her role? Her role is to assert, to promote American dominance, to promote, to assert America's exceptionalism. This is what Liberian politicians, African politicians need to be doing. We need to create new political elites. We need to establish system of our politics where it doesn't matter who comes to power. If I am a career politician or if I am a career diplomat, I know that my purpose in terms of my life and my occupation is Liberian security. I am in it for Team Liberia slash Team Africa. I may not like Judge Weah, I may not like Joseph Boakai. But if I serve Liberia as an ambassador, if I serve Liberia as some low ranking diplomat abroad, I am there to make sure Liberia is successful in many ways, in any ways possible. This is what we need to breed in our politician. Watching Liberian politics, I am seeing a very strong, embarrassing reality of unprofessionalism. Politicians in Liberia are basically gossiper. I'm seeing these guys just gossip. Every day it's a bunch of nonsense. In Liberia, we have this thing which is you say, I say. You watch Liberian politics. This person say, that person say, this person this, that person this. Some Liberian politicians go as far as cursing at other people's moms and dad. That's how low we have fallen. And this is the case in many places in Africa. We need to worry about changing the situation in our country in terms of what politics is, how politics is practiced. I am seeing Liberians are trying to be so Americanized to the point where we want to run our government like the American government. No, we are black African countries. We are not American. We must run Liberia based on the reality of our people, our custom, our culture, and of our current situation. We should not run Liberia based on the diktat of other country, of outsiders. I think that's what's happening right now in Liberia. That's what is pushing this drive to quote unquote establish a war crimes court and an economic crimes court. I do mention in a video recently talking about the weakness of Africa, where I stated that Africa is so weak. And in this case, Liberia is so weak that if you send a dog representing one of those rich and powerful countries, especially Western countries, all that the dogs have to do is bark. Bark at Liberian or African politician, and the dogs will guarantee that Liberian politicians or African politicians will concede in various ways. And that's what we are seeing. Yes, the Americans are talking about freedom. The Americans are talking about justice. Justice is good. But if there is a possibility that our attempt to serve justice in this situation could lead to instability, if we are certain by that, should we carry out that justice? Shouldn't we then acknowledge the fact that the justice in this case will mean not returning our country to the situation of pre and during the Liberian Civil War years? That's what justice is. So, yes, Joseph Boakai is saying that he's going to consult the United Nations or advice on the situation in Liberia to establish the War Crimes Court and the Economic Crimes Court. The United Nations might say, okay, we're going to help you, we will support you. But if there's a possibility that Nimba County could become angry and a war crimes court that goes after Prince Johnson could lead to unrest in Liberia, should we initiate this court? Shouldn't the peace and stability of the country be the primary motivation, the primary action of the government? We need to think about politics, how it serves our people, how it serves our country, based on the current situation of the country, not based on a rhetoric, not based on cliches, not based on big phrases that makes us look good, that make us feel like we good speakers of English. So no, Liberia does not need a war crimes court or an economic crimes court. Liberia need another truth and reconciliation. Liberia need to forgive itself, forgive its children, whether they are war crime criminals, whether they are victims of war. We need to celebrate or dismiss the situation of our country based on the possibility that we preserve and promote peace, not based on the rhetoric or the policy of outsiders. We do not need an economic crimes court. We need to talk about how we fix the economy. We need to talk about uh, punishing those who cheat the country and the people. When we are talking about the situation, the economic situation in Liberia as war crime or economic crimes court and try to give it that kind of international title, we are setting a very high bar, a very high and an unnecessary bar that could lead to danger in the future. If we are going to mention or stress economic crimes court, we must then clarify what the crimes are and who are the criminals. And once we do that, we must acknowledge the fact that we ourselves may have been the criminals or the accomplices to the economic crime. If we detect economic crimes being committed, what are the punishments? Who should we punish and how should we punish them? Are we considering the fact that if there are economic crimes being committed, that we ourselves could be the criminals? And are we ready to be punished? Are we ready that are we ready for the fact that we ourselves could or would be scrutinized in the manner in which or in the manner by which we are scrutinizing others? These are things that we want to acknowledge and accept. We must talk about the economic situation and not put the economic situation in Liberia in terms of the crimes court in which we are putting it side by side to war crimes. This gonna be a problem for us in the long term. There is an African saying, talk softly and carry a big stick. I think what the current leadership in Liberia, whether the president or those in the Congress, the Senate, and the representatives, they have been doing lots of talking while carrying a tiny stick, not acknowledging or not considering the fact that those quote unquote criminals who they may be going after could be the ones with the bigger sticks. And if they start swinging, many in Liberia might end up with broken jaw. We must carry justice in Liberia based on the reality of our country, the situational aspect that make up Liberia, not based on the diktat or the policy or the exception or the expectation of outsiders. We must also be willing to educate our people, not in terms of knowing what the reality is, but accepting the pros and cons, scrutinizing the pros and cons of our actions. Peace.